Dear students, today we are going to discuss how to find if resultant of three vectors is equal to 0 or not. Let us try to attempt this question. The question is, which of the given values represent magnitude of vectors adding up to 0? So adding up to 0 means which the resultant of the three vectors should be equal to 0, right? So there are two things that you need to check, right? So the first thing is, if any of the two numbers are adding up to the third, right? So for example, if you take option A, right, 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, right? If you take option A. So if that is the case, the resultant of the three vectors can be easily be equal to 0. How? If they are simply arranged in a collinear form. For example, this is the vector 2, this is the vector 3, and this is the vector 5. If they are arranged in such a fashion, you can clearly see the sum of the three vectors, or you can simply say the resultant. Okay, if I say the resultant should be equal to 0. So this is the first way, right? See if any two numbers are adding up to the third number. The second way, sometimes you will see if you take option B, right? You can see none of the numbers, if you add up, is equal to the third number, right? 3 plus 4 is 7, which is greater than 5. 4 plus 5 is 9, not equal to 3. 5 plus 3 is 8, not equal to 4. If that is the case, we have to check if the three vectors can form a closed triangle. So what is the criteria? How to find if the vectors are forming a closed triangle? I will take it up here. So you have to check if the vectors are forming a closed triangle. So what is the criteria, right? The criteria is if any two, if sum of any two sides of a triangle, or let me tell it this way, in a triangle, sum of any two sides is greater than the third side. What it means, in a triangle, if you take any two sides, its sum is always greater than the third side. So if this condition is fulfilled, then the three numbers will actually form a closed triangle. So let us check option B. So what are the numbers 3, 4, 5? So we'll pick up any two sides, right? 3 plus 4, which is equal to 7. You can clearly see it is greater than 5, right? 4 plus 5 is equal to 9, which is greater than the third side, that is 3. Lastly, 3 plus 5 is equal to 8, which is greater than 4. So you take up any two sides, its sum is greater than the third side. If that is the case, we can form a triangle using these three numbers. Now, if we can form a triangle using these three numbers, we can always form a closed triangle. And we all know that if it forms a closed triangle, right, we can always arrange the vectors in the same order, right, and it will actually form a right angle triangle, right, and hence you can see the resultant of the three forces is equal to 0 because it is a closed triangle. Similarly, let us check option C. Can it actually, is any two numbers adding up to the third, right? 1 plus 2 is 3, greater than 5. 2 plus 0.5 is 2.5, right, which is greater than 1. But unfortunately, 1 plus 0.5 is equal to how much? 1.5, and this is not greater than 2. So these three numbers on option C, it cannot form a closed triangle, right? What will happen if you try to form a closed triangle? So this is, let me say, 1, right? This is, let me say, if you try to form a triangle, this is, let me say, 2, and this will simply be 0.5, right? It will not form a closed triangle, right? So if that is the case, there will always be a resultant. Okay, the sum of the forces will be equal to the resultant. Now you can arrange this 1, 2, 0.5 in any way you want, right? It need not be in this shape, but you will never be able to form a closed triangle, which means that the resultant of these three vectors can never be equal to 0. Now let us see option D. What about option D, right? In option D, you can see 2 plus 4 is equal to 6. And again, this is not equal to 8, not greater than 8, right? Again, 2 plus 4 is 6, not greater than 8. If any of the two sides, if they add up, giving a number not greater than the third side, it cannot form a closed triangle. So what it means that this can add up to 0. This can also add up to 0, but this cannot add up to 0. This cannot add up to 0. Now, if you have understood this concept, can you just attempt this question and put it in the comments? Whose resultant cannot be equal to 0? Of ABCD, whose resultant cannot be equal to 0?